Well, I'd like to kind of pound my chest and take big credit for this. I don't even remember that, but I do remember my mom bringing us up in the church and taking everything seriously, and including tithing. And I know coming out of singlehood, had not always tithed, and our pastor actually at the time in premarital counseling suggested that marriage was a hallmark event in our lives, and that it was a good time to develop new habits if we had old habits that needed breaking, and I think maybe that had a big impact on it.
God, from the very beginning, asked for the first fruits. And I think that the rationale for me is to think of the first fruits as being the minute you get that, your income, your check, or a bonus, or inheritance, or whatever it is, to go ahead and attend to your tithe right away, because otherwise time goes by and it's hard to, oh, well, I'll go make that up. But I think that's why he called it, one reason he called it the first fruits was to take it right off the top. We owe everything to God. And that's really no way to repay him for everything, from our very breath to everything we have, but it is a way to honor God.
Yeah, in a way to acknowledge our standing before God, which, as I think Sarah said, everything, God made everything. He made us. He made this building, that grass, whatever wealth we may accumulate, he gave it to us. And it seems only fitting and actually almost not enough to just say, okay, here, Lord, is a tenth, and to say that as you receive it rather than kind of miserly waiting to see what you have left after you've done whatever you want to do.
And John, too, we've always the thought of tithing with financial tithing, but then there's a whole other category of tithing of your time. And, you know, the church needs volunteers. It needs people that will participate in activities, and that in his mind, and now it's in my mind, that those are two separate categories, but both need to be addressed, and both are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
What really, it's not just a verse, but the chapter 38 of Job has always struck me. God answers Job in a powerful way from the very beginning of, where were you when I stretched the lines and formed the foundations of the earth? And goes on and on and on with question after question. And it's always struck me far more compelling, really, than even Genesis, which I dearly love, but it's more personal. And when he ticks off everything that he's done for us, and it's just, anyway, the whole chapter, that I would call that one of my favorite verses.
Well, I think I mentioned earlier that one of my favorite ones, probably because it's so concise, is Matthew 6, 21, I believe. It says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And it seems to really sum it up very succinctly. I was thinking about this, though, and doing a little research in anticipation of this interview, and there's so many different scriptural references, but one that I was struck by that I know but I don't normally think of is that as far back as Abraham's paying tithe to Melchizedek was, Abraham is the father of Israel and spiritual Israel, us. So that pretty much says it's been there from the beginning. And So who would we be not to continue in that vein and tithe to the Lord a tenth of what He's given us? They're both so important, and I mean, I guess it's particularly timely to be sitting here in this beautiful new building that we've had the opportunity to gather in for worship now 3 times, and this Sunday will be the 4th time out of whatever, it's been 3 months. But as important as the building fund is, and it is important, it can't take precedence over the operating fund, because the operating fund is what not only keeps the building going, but also keeps all of the functions of the life of the church going. And so I think as we began the building fund, and again, it's poignant to me because when we began the building fund, we weren't sitting in a partially completed facility hoping to build another wing or sanctuary or whatever. We were sitting in a schoolhouse that we had use of on Sundays, wanting a home. And so to have this home now and have the opportunity to, as the Lord provides, continue building out this home, as important as that is, it's still very necessary and very much more important to the life of the whole church to give to tithe to the tithes and offerings that operate the church. There have been periods in our lives where we've given, we may have been tithing, I would say probably not, but a lot of it was going to, quote, charities that may or may not even have been religious in purpose. For me, at this point in life, what feels like a more mature approach, at least maybe just in my aging maturity, is to tithe to the church, and then if there's a ministry or a mission effort that I want to be involved in personally, or we want to, then that's fine too, but over and above whatever our giving, our tithe is to the church. And there are other ministries that we're involved with, but not at the expense of tithing to the church. Only that it has struck me since the first time I ever heard this phrase was in our former church, and we say it in this church frequently, if not every time we receive an offering. We refer to it as God's tithe and our offering. And I had never heard that before, and it's a simple phrase, but it again is profound in its simplicity, and it just is moving to me to hear that and to understand that at a different level than I had in the past.
The tithe actually belongs to God.
Right.